There were some questions.
Would you say that because the thinking about not having a boss,
Thinking about
not having a boss for all the parts will help me eliminate self-grasping and
well, that's the whole point. That's all we're talking about. That's it. That's the point. Recognizing there's no boss will help me get rid of self-grasping. That's the job. That's the point. And I mean, saying these words almost seems comical. It seems like a joke, you know, because they're so absurd almost. That there's no I. We don't know what it means. There's no boss. But of course I'm the boss. I make my own decisions. You see, the point, one way of putting it is this. Everything we say, I say I'm sitting in a chair. Correct. I'm the boss. Correct. This is conventional reality. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. But the biggest problem is, because we assume, you see, okay, Buddha's saying, it's a simple way to put it, there's a right eye and a wrong eye. There is an iPad that does exist and there's an iPad that doesn't exist. There is a cake there, but not the cake we think. That seems almost silly, but that is the way to say it. So what we're trying to do is refine our mind, become ever more subtle, ever more refined, into analyze everything we think and do and say in ways that we just think are a waste of time, but which is the point that Buddha's saying. And the more we then begin to recognize the lies and the deceptions in there that are polluting the truth. It's not as if 1 minute you have a lie and then you have a truth. We're saying truths. There is a conventional reality. Every word we're saying today, I am this, I'm that, I'm Robina, I'm 73, I'm Australian, I'm 1.52 metres, whatever, they're truth. But we don't realise we've got delusions polluting that truth and making them intrinsically true, and that's where it's abstract for us. So never think there's no I. Never think there's no iPad. So, okay. This is important. So it's confusing to think there's a right eye and a wrong eye. It sounds silly, but it's a good way to put it. So the other thing is this. Okay. Let's take another tack now. Let's look at another direction. The word emptiness gets us very confused. Let's look into the use of this word. And it's just over history, over centuries of these philosophers thinking, and they've really essentialized everything, you know. So we really, they throw us. We get very confused. So let's look at the use of this word, emptiness, okay? All right. I will say, oh, my cup's empty. Now, what do we mean? That's right. We know what it means. So we do use the phrase, oh, my cup's empty. But we know what it means, of tea. It's very simple. So to put it, okay, then I'll look at my bank account. Oh, God, my bank account's empty. We know what it means, of money, you know. We know what it means. You look in the room, oh, the room's empty, Robina. We know it means of people. So we have this phrase, something is empty. And this is exactly all Buddha's saying, that things are empty. But obviously we've got to look what he means, empty of what? Do you understand? Don't make it complicated. Don't make it holy. Don't give it special, holy, absolute, blah, blah meaning. Do you hear my point first? He's saying everything's empty. Of what? Well, of a weird thing called inherent existence. And why it's weird is because we've never heard of it. And why is he telling us? Very simple. Because we think there is such an existence as inherent existence. So don't even worry what inherent existence means yet. Buddha's telling us we think everything exists like that. Forget even, please, no questions. I beg you, you've got to listen. I beg you. If you want to listen, you don't have to. Put your earphones on. I've got to get into this first and explain. That, look, all we're trying to talk about is the use of the word empty and not get confused by it. Okay, let me use simple examples. Okay. So we hear the words, you've got to realize emptiness. You know? Oh. So let's look at it. Okay, let's say, what's your name again? Valda. Valda has a bank account. And she's convinced there is, say, 10,000 shekels in it. Let's say, you know. She knows she saved it up. She sees the account regularly. She's seen it building up, and now she wants to go to India. Whatever, let's say. And she's excited about her 10,000 shekels. This is a simple example, which we all know. So she opens up the bank account, puts her password in, gets to the statement, and what in reality is written there is a zero. Okay, now listen to this. That's reality, let's say. Now, she's expecting 10,000 shekels. She's been building it up. She's been thinking about it. She wants to spend it. She's all ready. She's going to get her air ticket. She's got the best price on Google. You understand all this story and drama building up, expecting, building up, and then she sees zero. Now, believe me, she won't go, oh, no shekels in my bank, never mind. She won't do that, will she? Why? Just simply why? Why not? She's got this massive story in her mind, hasn't she, about what's in the bank account. Now, really simply, the reality is there are no shekels. So she will get a massive shock, won't she? Because her expectation has not been met. Do you agree with that? It's really obvious, isn't it? I mean, if I'm married to this bloke, what's his name? What's his name? Shuki, that's right, Shuki. And he's my husband. And we're in the house every day. And we learn to expect each other to be there. We take it for granted. That's called seeing him as self-existent. I believe he's there. I know he was there yesterday in the last 20 years. So of course I expect him to be there tomorrow. And I come home from work and there's a note. Oh, I've left you, darling. I won't just say, oh, no, Shuki. Do you hear my point? I will have a mental breakdown because I have in my mind masses and masses of concepts about what I think is true. Are you hearing me? Ordinary example. So she will go, oh my God, where's my 10,000 shekels? Or something. Do you understand?
Yes, of course I do.
There you go. That's right. So this is a simple example. But no, please, just keep it vulgar, please. So this is a simple example. So let's use Buddha's terminology for what she just cognized in her bank. When I look in my cup and I say, oh, it's empty. What another way to put it, okay, extra point. Buddhism talks about how mind is the subject. And whatever it cognizes is the object. So eye consciousness, its object is shape and color. Ear consciousness, its object is sound. Every moment of mind has an object that it cognizes. Well, gross consciousness cognizes that. Anger cognizes ugly Shuki. Attachment cognizes divine chocolate cake. Everything, there's always an object of the mind. There cannot be a state of mind that does not have something that it cognizes. Are we communicating here? So, an object is like a noun, isn't it? A noun. So turn whatever I cognize here into a noun. I say it is empty, but turn that into a noun phrase. And I just cognized the emptiness of tea. Can you hear that? Yeah. It's not complicated. What she just cognized was the emptiness of... No, this is interesting. This is the interesting point now. We would think, if I looked in the bank account and I had no expectations, I would tell her the truth. The truth is the zero. Hear this point. She does not see 0 shekels. She sees the absence, the emptiness of her precious 10,000 shekels. Are you hearing me? Now, this is one of the biggest points. When we think, oh, there's no I, that's like throwing out all the shekels and you've got no shekels. Oh, that's emptiness. There's no I, there's nothing. That's nihilism. But what she cognized in that bank is a very different phenomenon. She cognized the absence of her precious 10,000 shekels. What I observed in the house was the absence of my precious Shuki. So the emptiness is not merely nothingness. Emptiness is the absence of the precious fantasy I we have believed in since beginningless time. So it's got nothing to do with nihilism. Are we communicating here? Thank you. This is how they use the word emptiness. So it's got nothing to do with nihilism. And as His Holiness says, we think it means chuck out all the bits and say, oh, there's no I. No, that's nihilism. And that's the worst mistake to make. It's way more nuanced. It's the absence of what we thought was there that Buddha says has never been, isn't, and never can be. And it's a profound, primordial, shocking realization when we see it for the first time. And as Rinpoche says, the really good yogis, their response is unbelievable fear. And he says fear like you've never known before. Profound fear. But he says, excellent if you have fear. Don't be scared of it, because you never disappear. But he says the best yogis have bliss and joy when they finally see the thing they've believed in for beginningless time as never, can never, and will never exist. Are we communicating? Just words, So it's the absence of something. And the more you've believed in it, and that's why we suffer. We've been believing for eons in things that don't exist, so we're always insane, expecting and not getting and hoping and this and it's like living in madness. Are we communicating? That's how they use the word. It's the absence of the fantasy I that we have completely assumed that is the source of all suffering of all our lives since beginningless time. So it's massive. And as Lama Zopa said, Lama Yeshe, another book I've just finished, Wisdom Has Got, is on Lama Yeshe's book on Mahamudra, this blissful, beautiful, sweetest teaching on Mahamudra, this very advanced practice that we get all excited about because it seems so simple. But it's a marvelous way to realize emptiness, a marvelous book. I can't recommend enough you get it. I hope that, you translate it into Hebrew. So in there, as Lama Zopa says, Lama Yeshe, he says that... I forget what he said. Anyway, never mind. It's a very lovely book. You should get it. It's another approach to it's a very delicious approach to realizing emptiness. And he says in that you cannot possibly get this realization unless you have perfected single-pointed concentration. Impossible. But we can start somewhere with where we are right now, getting the words right. So emptiness refers to the absence of the I that doesn't exist, that we think exists. They have many terms for it. An I that's independent, an I that's inherent, an I that exists from its own side, an I that's intrinsic, a thing, an essence. Like I said, even the Greeks say it, all religions say, this essential essence that's permanent and unchanging, and the Buddha's arguing that it can't be like that because it's interdependent. So as Rinpoche says, when you've realized the emptiness of the fantasy I, it's like you realize the real I. But the real I, the interdependent, dependent arising I, and this is not meant to be tricky, is so subtle, it's as if there is no I. So it's a really subtle point. And the two truths lead us, because these come together, they infer each other, whereas instinctively we think they're opposite. But really bringing these together is bringing us to the middle way, which is the final realization of the Buddha, when there's no longer a separate sense of subject-object. These are words for it. We need to know the words first, Huh? That's where we're heading, yeah.
To go into
So,
object and the subject? Yes?
What's we do?
That's what he's meaning.
Well, one way of saying the middle way is where it's neither eternalism, this nonsense here, nor nihilism, this nonsense here. When these two come together perfectly, the two truths, then we realize that dependent arising means emptiness, and emptiness means dependent arising. And that's the real middle way. Huh? Go, sweetheart, yes.
So understanding emptiness, you cannot suffer, right?
Once you realize emptiness, even as you begin to even understand it a little bit, you lessen your suffering. It's gradual. When you finally realize that, as Lama Zopa says, there is no fear, therefore no suffering. So someone could be killing you, like Lama Zopa, drowning.
This, from your what you see around, people like when they see it like an hour a day. So.
Well, sweetheart, what, darling?
I don't know. I know it's a silly question, but I feel there's less suffering, of course, because...
Sorry, what do you mean, sweetie? You feel there's less suffering? Well, who's suffering?
Because I see that when I suffer, I brought something from me to the situation, as if it happens to me. And if it doesn't happen to me, I don't suffer. So... How long will it take?
You're doing fine. Keep moving, baby.
So how long?
You're doing fine. Just keep moving. Keep moving. Keep moving. What else, people? Other questions? Huh? Are we communicating here? You had a question before, sweetheart. No, the one who believes in God. What's your question, darling? Nothing? No questions?
I'm very confused.
It's all right, sweetie. Just relax and enjoy. You had a question. You did. What is it?
If you say that everything we experience is a ripening of a seed,
Yes, that's right.
what does purification?
Okay, good. All right. Another. Close the chapter. New section. Okay. New chapter now. So this This is very helpful, actually. This is interesting. Let's talk about this one before I get to that question. We might have to do that tomorrow. How are we going? Time to go home. What time is it? Oh, well, I'll try and squeeze in a bit more in 20 minutes. Okay. Okay, now listen, I want to now go into more details about how karma ripens and why we choose, if you like, to do certain things, good or bad. It's very helpful. So to understand this, we have to understand, first of all, understand attachment, which we've talked about a little bit, and we have to understand another part of the mind, and I mentioned it in brief. So in this model of the mind, you've got these three categories. The neurotic, deluded voices of ego grasping, attachment, anger, all the nonsense, anxiety, fears, dramas, all that. Then you've got the virtues, the reasonable states of mind, the valid ones, the wonderful ones. Then you've got, as I call them, the mechanics. And what I mean by that is concentration, good memory. There's one called discrimination. It happens every second. Every second we're looking around, we're seeing, aren't we? We're discriminating all the different things in the room automatically, you know. Otherwise we'd be senile, we'd be crazy, wouldn't we? You see what I'm saying? It's simply called discrimination, and it's happening every second. And it's a vital part of our mind. And especially when you learn to meditate, it's a crucial part of your mind that can distinguish between the neurotic thoughts and the virtuous ones. That's the point about he's gone home. Where is he? Oh, this one. We talked before. So you can learn, you've got to have good discrimination so you can distinguish between virtue and non-virtue. This is a fundamentally necessary one. But remember, snipers need it. That eagle coming for the kill needs discrimination. These are the ones, that's why I call them the mechanics. They're neither virtuous nor non-virtuous, but they're necessary. So, okay, there's a grouping called the 5 always present states of mind. Discrimination is one of them. Intention, which if you want a boss, intention's the boss, but it's in the mind. It's not separate. Intention is the meaning too. The actual meaning, the essential meaning of karma, action, is mental action. And intention is the first step. Intention, I will, volition. So even by walking out that door, if you see me stand up, go to the end, turn right, you can deduce very clearly that there was intention, I will walk out the door. There's discrimination that can see I've got to turn right. There's good memory. I don't get halfway and go, what was I doing? Do you understand? So they're all working overtime, working together, these parts of our mind, right? This is natural. Intention is the first one. If there's no intention, there is no karma created. It is so clear. We'll have to go into this more detail tomorrow when we talk about karma and purification. Okay. Okay. I haven't finished yet. Another one is called attention. So intention first, I will walk out the door, then I pay attention. Then discrimination comes in to help me do, and good memory comes in, and all work together, concentration, then I get out the door, you know. That's in everything we ever do. But 99% of what we do is on autopilot because we've practiced it, we've programmed ourselves. So, you know, that little monkey, there's a particular kind of monkeys or apes or something, I don't know which kind, that love sex especially, apparently. So this is what, you know, this little monkey that gets born, or a chimp or whatever, it pops out of mummy's womb, it turns around and has sex with her. And his sister, and his mother, and his daddy, and his uncle, and his auntie. They really like sex. So that's karma, habit, okay? That's habit, karma, and it's clearly discrimination. He doesn't go and stick his thing in some kind of hole in the wall. He sticks it in mummy, right? Because that's karma, and that's habit. So intention is there, attention is there. All these things are there, but they're programmed. We're programmed with all what we do. And that's what we say, oh, it's instinctive. Well, instinct is simply you've done it that often that it's second nature, because you've done it that often. Mozart plays the piano instinctively because he's done it that often. It's not rocket science. So, okay, now, the other one of these 5 is called feeling. And this is not how we call like emotions, you know. There's simply, we only have 3 kinds of feeling. I inferred this before. There's pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, neutral feeling. Well, let's forget the neutral, okay? Who cares about them? We've got pleasant feelings and we have unpleasant feelings. And look at our lives. It is really obvious. Everybody wants pleasant feelings. That's another word for happiness, okay? Our trouble is, when we say happiness, we think of the outside object, don't we? We think of the sunny day. We think of handsome boyfriend. We think of a delicious chocolate cake. That's what, when we say happiness, we mean that. But actually, happiness is a state of mind. Do you understand? So there's pleasant feelings, which are happiness. There's unpleasant feelings, which is unhappiness. So we all know there's a spectrum of these. You can have the absolute bliss of the best happy feelings in the universe to the most mild happy feelings. The same with the unhappy feelings, the same with unpleasant feelings. Are we communicating so far? And there's every millisecond of our day, there's one or other of these. And this is how we get stuck in samsara. This is the heartbreak, okay? So I'll take this example of, let's say, this little boy. I always use the two examples. One little boy who cried with compassion for the lice when his mummy was taking the lice out of his head. He's in tears of compassion. Don't hurt them, mummy. It's their home. Leave them alone. Leave them alone. It's their home. He was doing everything he could to stop her from hurting the lice in his own head. Well, we can deduce he had the karma of non-killing. Second, the other little boy, we can deduce he had the karma of killing because his mother told me from the first second he saw fishing, he fell in love with fishing. And so he was a fisherman for the rest of his life. So let's look at, this is why this business of free will, not free will, is kind of an interesting topic. So let's look at how this works. So there's this little boy. So we can deduce that he got a human birth. So what his main bank vault, the four main ways karma ripens: the type of birth, like animal, human, the tendencies, your experiences, and then the environmental. We'll go into this in more detail tomorrow. So there's this boy. Due to virtuous past karma, one of his virtuous karmic seeds in his main bank vault is triggered at the time of his past death. He could have been an animal, whatever. And it's triggered and it programmed him to go to his nice mummy's womb in California. Jess, my friend. Second, lots of tendencies. She said he was a lovely boy, kind, intelligent, generous, good person, but he had a tendency to kill. Like, look at the world, I'm sorry. Look at the world. Most humans kill something. I was taught that Jesus, that God made animals especially for humans' benefit. I mean, maybe obviously Jews think the same, right? So I'm not being rude, I'm just pointing things out. You understand? I mean, the Hindus slaughter sheep every year, whatever they do. Whatever, it's not bulls or something, or bullocks, I don't know what, in Kathmandu. I mean, you know, I think Tibetans killed a few yaks. But generally speaking, the Buddhist one is, hey, don't kill any beings, babe. We've all been them all countless times. None of them want to be suffering and all want to be happy. So at least try not to harm any sentient beings. I'm not saying we do it, but it's a good instruction. So nevertheless, we can deduce from the fact that he began, I'll explain the story, that he had killed in the past. Okay, so what happened is this. There he is, a human. Lots of good tendencies. Lots of good experiences. Born in a nice place with a lovely mummy and people like him, blah, blah, blah. Nice environment. Lots of good karma ripening from his own past virtue. But the tragedy is the tendency to kill. So, she told me, roughly, when he first went fishing, it's like, I'm saying that he fell in love. So what's happening? Technically, what's happening? Okay. What's happening is this. Due to past karma, his habit to kill, it doesn't arise in his mind to go fishing until he meets fishing. Do you understand? So he meets the scenario that triggers the memory, if you like. And that's the karmic seed being triggered. The condition triggered it. Instantaneously, because he had the habit to do it, it triggered a pleasant feeling. Okay? Now, the other little boy, because of his past tendency to not kill, the experience of the louse in his own head triggered compassion in his mind. Do you understand my point? So straight away, we can deduce he had the tendency to not kill. And not only not kill, but even have compassion. This other boy, a lovely boy, but it triggered his past killing, and instantaneously a pleasant feeling pops up due to the past karma. The next millisecond, attachment kicks in and makes the fishing look completely divine. And attachment continues to feed and trigger, if you like, it's a bit rough, the way I'm saying is a bit rough, the pleasant feelings in the body. So then naturally he deduces it. And then the next thing is the attachment, this is the killer, makes the fishing look delicious. I remember reading about an Australian journalist. He was the arts writer for Time magazine in America for like 40 years. Robert Hughes. He wrote a lot of books. He was very poetic and a good writer, you know. So he talked about how when he first went trout fishing, how it was a cosmic experience. So what that means is he had really, really, really pleasant feelings. And that's what a torturer does. I remember reading about one of those serial killers in America. This fellow who spent 30 years, hidden of course, you can't torture in public. You can fish in public because people don't mind it. But I always say, imagine if that poor boy, because he became a fisherman for the rest of his life, that he liked to kill poodles. He'd have to do it in secret because no one approves of killing poodles, you know. So this torturer, Jeffrey Dahmer, years ago, this American fellow, and he talked about how he was, since a tiny boy, he was compelled to torture creatures. Well, I mean, think about fishing. Basically, it is torture. They die an agonising death. They want water. All they got is air. I remember my uncle, Stasis Arkashauskas, I never thought about fishing, but he was this fisherman. We'd go up to the river to his house and we'd swim in the summer. And suddenly he came back one day with all the fish. I never thought about it. And he threw all the live fish on the ground and he walked away. I said, Stasi, they're still alive. He said, what do you think? That's how they die. I never thought of it. That's a shocking way to die. So really, fishing is torture. Do you understand my point? It's a horrifying death. They die agonising, slow deaths. Well, that's torture. Well, this guy, he was compelled to torture creatures. He knew Mummy hadn't taught him, but he got good feelings. So, of course, as soon as he started doing it, good feelings would come. What can you do, That's from past karma. You're programmed. That's how the little monkey screws his... What? You're going to have sex with his mummy.
But also feelings go...
What, darling? What?
Also feelings pass from lifetime to lifetime. Not only mind.
Feeling is the name given, the way Buddhism is using it, is given to one part of your mind that is the capacity to have unpleasant or pleasant feelings. That's all. Technically. It's just technical, okay? It's part of your mind. And we all know about pleasant feelings, and we know about unpleasant feelings. It can be through the body as well, obviously. So, okay, the point is this. Because, you see, this is where attachment is... A feeling is the one that misleads us, but attachment is the killer. Because attachment's job is to watch like a hawk and to locate the object that when we have contact with it, will trigger pleasant feelings. So very quickly, that Australian guy, because pleasant feelings were very pleasant, that torturer, one torturer I read about, he had like orgasms, he said. It was his what we call sexual pleasure. Of course, we think it's disgusting, but we analyse it. It means he had strong habit to torture from past lives. Strong habit. So naturally, because it gives you very pleasant feelings, and this makes us very humble, look at our pathetic habits of just eating too much food. We can't resist, isn't it? Because why? Because if you vomited every time you ate food, you wouldn't eat food, I promise. You get my point? We do it because it brings pleasant feelings. Or we hope it does. It doesn't last long, unfortunately, because we eat too much. Then it turns into unpleasant feelings. But we forget that tomorrow. Do you understand? So the more powerful the karma with it, the more delicious. So, for example, I always think of Romeo and Juliet. I remember Baz Luhrmann, that Australian guy, he made... No, not Baz Luhrmann, another one. He made Romeo and Juliet, but so did West Side Story. Remember West Side Story? Yeah. Oh, I got the DVD, the iPad on my iPad, So there's Tony and Maria. They meet at the dance with the Sharks and the other business. The Sharks and the who? Yeah. Jets, the Sharks and the Jets. They're all there dancing, and then suddenly Maria and Tony see each other. Everything else goes away. Karma ripens. Bliss. From past karma. The fisherman and the fish, past karma. Romeo and Juliet, past karma. The torturer, the monkey and his mummy, past karma, So you, boom, come together. So the habit, that's the killer of the habit. The habit, so let me just finish the whole story. So the habit is the karmic imprint. Intense karma to kill. So then it triggers attachment, which makes it look so delicious. And for the cosmic guy, it made it so delicious. It's like being in love. That's how heavy his karma was. But he sees it as delicious, so he never thinks it's bad. That's the point. And that's why, with attachment, it sounds very benign, but attachment blinds you from seeing the harm you do to others. He never saw suffering, and he's a kind man. Do you hear me? I remember seeing on the television an interview with the Inuits. We used to call them Eskimos. And they kill seals. They bash baby seals to death. That's what I've heard. Maybe they've changed their culture. I don't know. But he was almost in tears, this fellow, with hurt at these rude animal rights people daring to criticize his culture. This is what my father taught me. This is what my grandfather taught me. This is our culture. And so, of course, we honor culture. And because he's got the strong karma to kill and to torture, baby seals will squeal. Fish don't squeal. But he never saw suffering. He didn't bash his wife to death. Do you understand? So it's habit, that's karma, and then attachment comes and it makes it look delicious. So logically, the fisherman will logically deduce fishing must be good because it gives him good feelings and it looks delicious. So he was compelled. He spent the rest of his life until he was 29 when he died scuba diving as a fisherman. You know? Do you hear? So this is the suffering. This is why we have to know these things. This is nuts and bolts. This is technical. We've got to know these states of mind, how they function, how they work together. What is this? What's that? What happens then? It's not just cosmic hippie stuff, you know. Do you understand, people? This is why it's so important you study low rig. You know, work it out. Study low rig. Yeah.
So basically, if I had a karma influence to kill because of my past life...
Habit of killing, yes. Or whichever life. Could have been 1,000 lifetimes ago.
Yeah, so is there a way out of it? Because
that's purification.
I will continue...
That's right. That's what she asked, and then we'll do that tomorrow. That's purification. But there's two answers to that, basically. That's why the very first level, entry-level, junior school into Buddhism is not look at your mind. That's high school. That's too advanced. The first one is Buddha's exhorting us, like Jesus, like God, like Allah, don't kill, don't steal, don't jump on your wrong partner, etc., etc. They're pretty basic instructions of how to behave, which is at least the start to refrain first from harming others. So at least in that way, we stop sowing more negative seeds. Do you get my point? So for the fisherman example, and lots of people I know who are Buddhist, or my gangster friends in prison in America, the Mexican gangsters who've spent their lives killing, the first thing is stop killing, and then you've got to purify the past killing before it ripens as more suffering. You've got to stop sowing more weeds in your garden and pull out the weeds you've already planted. That's the fundamental level of junior school entry level, which is the basis of all practice, of practicing morality.
But for stop killing, you need to wish to go against your attachment. So basically, you are programmed to do something.
Huh? What, darling?
You are programmed to do
yes,
something
that's right.
because of your attachment.
That's right.
What you say.
Yes.
It has to have the awareness.
Yes, that's right. Of course you do. And that's why it's so hard, because most people don't. That's the problem. That's the point. That's the tragedy. That's the suffering. That's the tragedy why you have such compassion for people. Because we don't see that we're harming, and we don't see there are consequences. So that's why, because the world approves of fishing, no one criticizes, whereas the world does disapprove of killing poodles or torturing people, so they've got to do it in secret, you know. But it shows how the compulsion is so deep. And that's why the fundamental one of morality, to look at it not as an instruction. This is why the Buddha says, it's not just merely an instruction from the Buddha, which is do what Buddha said. That's not enough. The Buddha says it's a natural law. So we've got to look at the logic of that and recognize very simply that no sentient being likes to be harmed. And I think that's pretty simple to prove. But you've got to have the wish to see that, you know. That's not too cosmic.
But what I'm asking is, so if I had the past generation of killing, I will keep going and killing again and again.
Until you have the awareness to stop.
Until I
Have the awareness.
It'll never end. It'll never end until you change. Like anything. What, darling?
I can go to lower.
Of course you can. You'll go to the lower realms, yes. This is lovely. It's not a lovely story. You won't like this story, but I'll tell you the story. It's the end of the day on an unhopeful note. This story is very interesting. What happened was at Kopan Monastery, this is like 25 years ago, I met this woman. She came to my room crying. She said that she just heard Lama Zopa talk about karma, and she was in tears because her beautiful boy, who died 5 years before, I always tell this story, had died scuba diving, and she told me this story about him, right? So she's just getting over the grief of his death. So she said, well, where's he been reborn, you know? I said, well, I don't know, but go and ask Geshe Lama Konchog. This amazing Lama who was a yogi, who was a Vajrayogini practitioner, lived in the mountains naked, no food, no sleep, no anything, brilliant yogi, blah, blah, you know. And these amazing holy beings, they have clairvoyance. This is a fundamental realization for all these holy beings. They don't say they have, but it's a natural realization. They've accessed these subtler levels of their mind. They've removed so much of the delusion that their mind is clear. They can see the past, the future, the minds of others, etc., etc., etc. You know, this is just natural. So, but they very rarely tell you what they see. They're very kind and wise. So basically, she went to him and she said, where's my son born? So they rarely tell you, but he did. And he said, she said his name, and then he said, oh, so basically he's accessing his Google as well. They've got perfect memory, okay? You just say a name and it pops up in their filing cabinet, you know? Oh, he said, first he was born in the animal realms and now he's in the hell realms. And she went, oh no. What can I do for him? And Geshe-la laughed sadly and said, what do you mean for him? For everybody. Now, she's not even a Buddhist. I met her years later, and she said this was very moving and very helpful for her mind, which helped her get compassion. I find that very interesting. I mean, I remember one of my friends, she asked if her mother, she asked Lama Zopa if her mother was in the lower realms, and he said, yep. So, I mean, some people get to hear it. You have to, trust or not trust these people. If you don't have trust, you just think they're talking rubbish, whatever. So it's just kind of interesting. But the point of all this is to have compassion for ourselves and go, okay, and then to have compassion for others. I mean, we'll talk more about compassion tomorrow. But understanding this for ourselves is like understanding why I'm suffering, and then you can't help but realize we are all in the same boat, Life after life after life after life after life. I mean, it's a big picture, it's a big story. It's kind of shocking, but it's interesting and it's encouraging because all of this stuff is not at the core of our being, and we can fix it. This is the idea, So feeling is a powerful one to remember. And that's what leads us up garden paths. Because you check our lives. We're all junkies for good feelings. It's just natural. Attachment and feeling work overtime together, The second we get good feeling, we will do it again. The second we have unpleasant feeling, we'll adjust it to get a pleasant feeling. And of course, because we're hungry for pleasant feelings. And if the hunger for pleasant feelings is very strong, and it happens to come from having to fish or kill or jump on everybody else's partner, it's a problem, It's very painful. That's why, there's a friend of mine I mentioned, I think, on death row in Kentucky. He's a Buddhist, Mitch. He's getting close to his death date, I'm ready for that electric jolt, he said. He said, there's one friend, I know this guy, I've known him for 20 years. He said, Robina, he thinks of torture all the time. So when you have this understanding of karma, you at least have a theory for why he's born with all this horrible feeling to torture. He's this quiet guy, but his mind, think of yourself with your attachment to food, then that's what his is, but his attachment to torture because of the habit. And we all know with our thoughts, we can't control them. We know that. Buddha says we can. Concentration. That's why they say when you get single point of concentration, your mind is so radiant, so clear, so effortless, so blissful, delusions cannot control you. You can easily work on them. Quickly get realizations. So it's kind of amazing. This poor guy, he said he thinks of torture all the time. Could you imagine? I mean, forget who he harms. But this is the point about understanding suffering and karma, when we realize that we are caught up in this nonsense, that we are causing our own suffering with our own ridiculous delusions. So then once we know that, it's not blame and guilt and anger, then you can only have compassion for others. But don't be sentimental. Compassion's got wisdom. You don't say, oh, the poor thing can't help it, and let him torture your kid. God Almighty. Protect your kid and him. So wisdom... When compassion has got wisdom, it's got iron. It's not sentimental, gooey compassion. Compassion with wisdom is profound, It's wise and it'll be for the benefit of that person. Do you understand, people? Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Time to go home. Yes.
Just say
Yep.
the title of the list of 5 factors of
Yeah.
Intention.
Intention, attention, recognition or discrimination, feeling and contact. Huh? What happened? And contact. The fifth, contact. So basically he had the karma from the past triggered pleasant feeling. He had contact with the object. Discrimination saw what it was. Attachment was triggered, and then that's another thing. Attention and intention. Those 5 all worked together there, and then attachment came in and made it look divine, and so he kept doing it.
And how do you call the list?
The 5 always present. They call them mental factors. I think we can call them states of mind. The 5 always present. They're happening every millisecond in everything we're doing. And this is highly intricate technical stuff, but the way they talk about it, we're not discussing the brain here, we're discussing the actual mental cognitive process. And these are developed we need discrimination, intention, attention, concentration, mindfulness, alertness. All of these are trained magnificently to do a brilliant job in single point of concentration. Then we can really do the job of completely reconfiguring our minds, quickly get realizations once we've got concentration. Someone else? Enough? Go home time? So that's it. Goodbye, and we'll see some of us tomorrow. And you have homework, okay? 1, when you hit the pillow, you think, may I see my dreams as dreams. Not remember them when you wake up, but see them as you're dreaming. See and notice that you are dreaming. This is really good, because that means you're conscious at your subtle level. Do you understand? That's helpful. And of course, then as His Holiness said, if you are aware that you're dreaming, remember to meditate on emptiness. If you can. But say a strong determination before you go to sleep. And then second, before you go to sleep, you should laugh at this. If you wake up in the morning, of course we think I will wake up in the morning because we think we're permanent and forever. If I wake up in the morning, I'm going to bliss out. So do this. If you wake up in the morning, notice the first second you come back into consciousness, wow, I'm still alive. We never think this because we take ourselves for granted. But we have to remember we're impermanent. We don't know how much petrol is in our tank. It will run out at some point, and we do not know when. So delight that you can't believe you're still alive. So you think as soon as you wake up, may I make the most of today. You hop out of bed, you do your thing, you come here, you do whatever you do, you know. May I make the most of today so I can develop my qualities, so I can benefit sentient beings.
If you're Jewish, if you practice religion, that you say when you wake up in the morning, thanks for giving back.
There you go. How wonderful. Whatever works for you. Whatever works for you. Okay? Okay, people. Thank you so much. Bye, darlings. Thank you.